Story 1. It is going to be in court for years. It will get a stay while it is being fought over. Luckily, Harvard knows some excellent lawyers. That is my logical brain. The rest of me has fallen into a nihilistic funk. Story 2. This is a clear attempt to compel a major institution to submit to his demands as a warning to others who might try to resist. Story 3. I think we should stop looking at this as a battle of the elites and focus on the facts. This administration sent a list of demands that are not codified into law to a university that is under no legal obligation to comply. Instead of working with the House of Representatives and the Senate to pass a fair and just law that applies equally to all universities, this administration chose to weaponize the government against a university that pushed back. This issue has nothing to do with education and everything to do with an authoritarian regime attempting to punish and silence dissent. Story 4. Awful, but I am also worried about the part of the big beautiful bill that basically takes away the court's ability to pursue contempt charges. Securities and Exchange Commission Section 70302. Story 5. Well, I suppose that means the best and brightest in the world will be going to Cambridge and Oxford instead or elsewhere around the world. America's loss. Also, this is clearly illegal and I suspect it will not last long. I mean, it is not like Harvard has a top-notch law school with many of the United States' most knowledgeable lawyers, right? And it is not like almost half the current Supreme Court are Harvard graduates, right? Story 6. Putin and she could not do a better job of ruining America than this president and his administration have. Story 7. I think it is excellent. It will ensure a much higher standard of university and business. Note, I am from New Zealand, and education is our third largest export. This will ensure that the smartest people in the world will have to find other countries like ours to study in. It will ensure that these gifted graduates will be available for New Zealand business and will have a fond memory of our country, which will lead to future deals and connections. For Americans, it is the most unwise decision I have ever heard of. The foreign students were subsidizing the local students. This change will ensure that the top universities are filled with the very smartest people in America, while foreign universities will be filled with the very smartest people from around the world. Story 8. The government should not have a say in private education, and Harvard is a private institution. All the people who say it does not affect them are making the same mistake described in the poem, Then They Came For. This is what slipping into an authoritarian state looks like. People allow their elected officials to hand power over to one person. Then they cannot take it back. Story 9. I could not imagine a series of actions so specifically coordinated to weaken and cripple a once powerful nation that is any better than just handing over the news headlines of the series of events this regime has orchestrated. They are singularly harmful to the American people and their way of life. Story 10. Just trying to make everyone uninformed enough to vote for these authoritarian individuals. Oh, and it is clearly illegal. Story 11. It is an intimidation tactic. They probably know it will not be allowed to happen, but they are systematically normalizing this type of overreach. They keep doing this and people will stop paying attention. Story 12. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Story 13. For those who do not know, international students bring significant revenue to universities, arguably subsidizing local students. Fewer international students result in increased tuition fees. Story 14. Doomed. Very doomed. This is the beginning of a very dark and long chapter. May we see the end. Story 15. I'm thinking of true long-term consequences. One of the country's top institutions being crippled like this, either losing all foreign students or most, as people will not want to go to Harvard given the risks, sends a good chunk of American soft power down the drain, along with what little is left. Story 16. This was an intentional news distraction from the excessive anti-working class spending bill they pushed through Congress while everyone slept last night. Story 17. He is a traitor to America, free speech, the rule of law, our Constitution, and the free world. His administration is traitorous. His supporters are traitors. They betray everything this country was built on and has always stood for. Traitors. Story 18. Aren't international students at colleges and universities around the world paying much higher fees that help subsidize United States students' fees? This is the case in every other country, and it sounds like more misleading statements. Story 19. Even if Harvard wins this case in court, the impact will be significant. The United States is rapidly becoming a less attractive place for intelligent people of all kinds except criminals. We are witnessing the Russification of the country, and Russia is not a magnet for smart, well-intentioned people. Story 20. I think they chose today so we would not look at the large bill that is gutting education, healthcare, and the environment. It makes 34% of all spending direct payments from the younger working poor to the old rich people. Story 21. It is quite hilarious. There will be a legal challenge that puts it on hold. Then Harvard can ask any of its distinguished legal alumni to represent them. Story 22. I feel like he would not have nearly as much power to do this without all his enablers in Congress. Story 23. America, you have gone from a democracy to an autocracy in under 6 months, and it is getting worse every day. What are you going to do about it? Story 24. Terrible. My girlfriend is currently an MBA student at the business school. 40% of the business school is international. It is chaos. From a policy standpoint, this is absurd. Do you really want to deport the most gifted and talented students in the country? To misquote Donald Trump, they are sending their best. They are eliminating extremely competitive grants that were awarded to these researchers because they are the most qualified people to conduct this research in the country, as determined by an independent panel of experts. They are punishing students who chose to attend Harvard before Donald Trump was re-elected, students who could have gone to their best university in their home country and succeeded there. I know many of my peers are considering faculty jobs in Canada and Europe as a direct result of these attacks on higher education. I am currently finishing my PhD at another Ivy League school. Before people ask what my research has contributed, I started working about 5 years ago on large language models. My research and datasets have been directly used in models like Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, Llama, and Roberta. I also published a paper last year that is being directly used in Google's new Gemini diffusion language model, launched earlier this week. Many of these are ideas I tried to pursue in industry, but I could not get the funding or resources to do this kind of research until Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer was released in 2022, even at large technology companies for the most part. For context, when I started working on large language models, fewer than 20 people in the whole country were working on this, half of whom were at OpenAI. Story 25. It is completely foolish. It saves no public money, helps no one, and damages the career prospects of people whose minds we need. I hope it remains tied up in court for decades so that even his great-grandchildren have to be there for the verdicts. Story 26. I feel like this is not something he should be thinking about. The president appears to be doing everything except his actual job. Politics, make America great again, Democrats, all that aside, he is not doing his actual job. He just seems to be going on a revenge tour without the hot body or the little black dress. Story 27. Why would you not want educated international students spending a significant amount of money in the United States? Approximately $44 billion in the 2023 to 2024 school year, supporting nearly 400,000 US jobs. This administration is extremely unwise. So is Make America Great Again. Story 28. My very strong opinion is that this conflict with Harvard is what ultimately causes Donald Trump to leave the White House. Story 29. They will ignore the courts again, detain the students, and deport them. Then they will deploy tanks. The United States of America is no longer functioning as a democracy. A regime is in place. This will not be wild or fun as the right finds out. This will be terrifying and disastrous. Story 30. Still wondering which hole Jill Stein disappeared into? Moscow. She seems to appear every election with Russian funding to split the left. Such a sleazebag. Story 31. Here is the thing that gets me. The Trump administration sent a demand for records to which Harvard's lawyers, who I hear are very competent, said they were not going to comply because the demand was illegal. The Trump administration responded by having Kristi Noem, who cannot even define habeas corpus, impose punitive measures on them which are also likely illegal. Doing something illegal because of unwillingness to wait for the courts to rule should be disqualifying for presidential immunity. At least pretend to declare another fictitious emergency first and be prepared to explain how your actions were necessary to address an urgent and unforeseen situation. Story 32. Feelings are not important. Go to the streets and protest this. He is coming for anyone with an education. He is just targeting the most vulnerable right now. Story 33. A petty little man trying to take revenge on anyone who stands up to him. He is a child desperately wanting to be a tyrant. How people support him is honestly beyond me. Story 34. How long will the United States of America watch the destruction of the legal framework that protects the freedoms and democracy it has been so proud of? Soon, the only option may be armed revolution, perhaps civil war, and then rebuilding. Story 35. Donald Trump and the Republican Party are doing what Chairman Mao and the Chinese Communist Party did in Communist China by attacking universities. They are entirely malevolent. Story 36. I do not have the numbers, but international students typically pay much more than domestic students and are not subsidized by taxpayers' money. This is a small part of a revenue stream. Story 37. I usually feel good when Donald Trump attacks a smart and capable entity. Let's see how it goes. They have $52 billion and many great lawyers. My fantasy is they partner with the Canadian government and open a campus in Ontario to accommodate all the foreign students for remote classes. The wealthy Asian families still get the Harvard diploma for their children, and they learn French. Story 38. What a terrible country. I really feel like many Americans would not accept what is happening right now if they knew how it works elsewhere. Story 39. Just another nail in the coffin of the United States world influence. It is nothing I did not expect, if I am being honest. He is going to make an example out of Harvard to intimidate other institutions into following. The long-term damage to the United States will be immeasurable. But neither he nor any of his associates care about long-term consequences. It is a smash and grab for your nation's wealth. All this anti-woke stuff is a diversion. Story 40. Why do people who attended Ivy League schools suddenly hate them? This seems to be a strange example of cult mentality. Story 41. I am not an American, and I am not directly impacted by this. However, I believe this is a total overreach of what a government should be doing. Land of the free, my ass. Story 42. The leader is single-handedly damaging your country. Instead of the shining city on a hill you believe you are, you will become a stinky cesspool in a swamp. Story 43. The people who will pay the price literally for this are American students. Foreign students are usually not eligible for most financial aid programs, so they pay full price. Once Harvard and other schools start to feel the effects, they will likely have to increase tuition, putting higher education even further out of reach for many people. Story 44. As a European, it certainly has advantages if the American brain drain stops, but it is still sad to see a former ally harming themselves repeatedly. Story 45. People who still think Make America Great Again supporters are acting in America's best interest are deliberately choosing to see the world that way. They are using their power to turn America into a white ethno-state at any cost. That is their entire project. Any obfuscation of that point misses what is happening right now entirely. There is no nuance to it. We are far past that point. They want a white ethno-state, and they are willing to destroy one of the most successful, productive, and globally impactful universities in history to achieve it. Story 46. The United States of America is now influenced by Israel, Russia, and Saudi Arabia under the puppet president, the felon. He sold the United States out to the highest bidders and the biggest terrorists. Story 47. Wait until a left-wing government decides that all unaccredited colleges and universities, mostly religious, cannot enroll foreign students. All the actions that the Republican Party is taking will eventually be done to them. Story 48. a deliberate distraction to avoid discussing how the large, excessive bill takes from the poor and gives to the rich. Story 49. Harvard refuses to bend the knee and they will win in court. There is no rationale for this regime to do all this nonsense. Story 50. I do not think the president should have all this power. Actually, half the time I do not know that he does. But people just are not pushing back. Story 51. The only good news about this administration's rampant violation of law is that they generally admit what they are doing openly, and then the lawyers in court have to defend it. Story 52. Cannot really say much on the internet. This is nothing new. Everyone should already understand where this is going and be preparing. Story 53. I feel Donald Trump is even less intelligent than I had originally thought. He does not recognize the benefits we have enjoyed or understand why we were so prosperous. There is a very good reason he has hidden his school records from view. Not intelligent. Story 54. Conservatives spent the Obama and Biden years claiming that they were weaponizing the federal government. Donald Trump is actually doing it, and there is not a single objection from the Republican members of Congress. Story 55. It is incredible how far he has gone. This would have been crazy fiction a decade ago, and it is just one of many horrific things he has done. Immigration and customs enforcement arresting, locking up, and deporting people without due process. Government-driven discrimination against transgender people. Book banning. Punishing the media for negative coverage. Accepting a plane as a bribe from a foreign country. Selling presidential access through his own cryptocurrency. Forcing public schools to teach or not teach what he wants. Shutting down government agencies without congressional approval. Using the government to drive business to Elon Musk. Story 56. It felt harsh. Imagine moving across the world, getting into Harvard of all places, and then suddenly your visa is at risk because classes went online. It made people feel like they were just pawns in a bigger game. Story 57. This is deeper than just Harvard. Just read about Project Esther by the conservative think tank Heritage Foundation. Story 58. I think it shows how the federal government can and will try to pressure a state or an institution, and maybe that is not a good thing. For example, do not allow transgender people to compete in women's sports, or we will withhold your federal funding for highway maintenance. What do those two things have to do with one another? Absolutely nothing. Yet still, the government will try to link one to the other. There needs to be legislation to prevent this kind of leverage. Something as important as highway funding should never be a bargaining chip. The same goes for education at Harvard. They are clearly being singled out here. If the United States wants to end all international enrollment across all schools, then I guess they could do that. They would still face a court challenge, of course, but at least it is not targeted. By revoking funding only for Harvard, they are proving that they are vindictive about something completely unrelated. Story 59. He is a convicted felon who is a megalomaniac. Hitler much. Governor Kristi Noem said, Harvard had plenty of opportunity to do the right thing. It refused. They have lost their student and exchange visitor program certification as a result. Let this serve as a warning to all universities and academic institutions across the country. What an evil person. She and Spencer Cox seem like twins, equally unwise with overdone appearance, bad hair and makeup, and more. Both work for a convicted felon. Story 60. Why is he trying to control everything? He is trying to tell private universities who they can or cannot enroll or what classes they can teach. He is punishing law firms based on who they represent. He is telling us how many toys we should be buying our kids. He is even taking over the arts programming at the Kennedy Center. Can this person just get out of our lives, please? Story 61. Frustrating. International students contribute so much. Moves like this just send the wrong message about what the United States values. Story 62. As a professor of a graduate program that hosts multiple international graduate students, I am very upset. If this happens to our much smaller school, it will have devastating effects. Story 63. Regardless of one's politics, it sets a bad precedent if presidents can micromanage who can and cannot enroll at a specific school. I feel that this is getting too much into the details for a president. Story 64. The destruction of America's most valuable resources continues to accelerate. Are we great yet, friends? Story 65. Yet another blatantly unconstitutional action that we are allowing the courts to address on their timeline, or waiting until the Republican Congress takes a stand. In other words, just another sign of how dire our situation is. Story 66. Many of the world's smartest students go to Harvard, and many of them stay in the United States to start businesses or work for American companies. Keeping these students out of Harvard probably sends them to other schools like Oxford or Cambridge. This will benefit the countries they choose instead of the United States. In the coming decade, American productivity will be lower because of policies like this. Story 67. Those who proclaimed for decades that there was tyranny from their government finally have actual tyranny from their government, yet they are silent. Story 68. A petty man taking petty actions against a university where his father could not buy admission. It will be dismissed. Story 69. I feel that Donald Trump is not only a deeply flawed person, but he is also hateful, unpleasant, and deeply ignorant. Story 70. Absolutely diabolical, abhorrent, and inhumane, just like his decision to cut Medicare for millions of Americans and cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is similar to his decision to end access to COVID-19 vaccines. None of it does any good. It is pure villain behavior. Story 71. I am disgusted by it. One of my nieces wanted to attend Harvard University one day, and I do not know how to tell her this news. Story 72. My future queen, literally the king of Belgium's daughter, is at Harvard this semester. I am wondering if she will have to leave or if there will be exceptions. Story 73. This is going to hurt our country in the long run. We need intelligent foreigners because the local population is not very knowledgeable. Story 74. He dislikes any form of free speech that does not align with his narrow perspective. He is a totalitarian through and through. Story 75. I really appreciate the rapid decline of intellectual talent in America and the voluntary relinquishment of our position as the world leader to China. Story 76. It is just a cover to keep the press focused on him while the people who control him continue to harm this country. Story 77. Serious question, and if someone has asked this already, I apologize. Can Donald Trump actually do that? It takes time to revoke visas and related processes. Story 78. Once again, our leader has done something extremely foolish, and the United States citizens will not do anything to stop it. Story 79. The ban also hurts the United States of America. Foreign students bring in dollars and interest to the United States of America, and we teach them about concepts like democracy. Vladimir Putin supports this ban. Story 80. It is funny because allowing international students into Harvard would actually benefit the United States. The majority of the citizens of any country are not highly educated. Allowing intellectual minds into the country to study and help accelerate development can be useful. Story 81. As an outsider, it seems utterly ludicrous. Why would you want to deny your universities the funding or your own students the opportunity to mix with a more diverse range of students from whom they can learn? As a Brit, this sort of thing greatly influenced my vote against Brexit, and I feel that I have only become more confident in my choice as I have watched events unfold. If a country of immigrants wants to deny the participation of immigrants in its society, let it decline. That is all I can say at this point. It is not like I would want to pay your ridiculous university fees anyway, and I will happily take my money elsewhere if this is your stance. The United States under Donald Trump is an absolute laughingstock to outsiders, and I guess it is attitudes like this that contribute to the difficult situation that your uninformed population was tricked into voting for. It is hard to say if you are an autocracy at this point or just so misguided that you will support somebody like Donald Trump. Story 82. My view is that in the short term, Harvard may call in their alumni who are extremely powerful to influence Donald Trump. I also think they will litigate this. That being said, in the broader picture, American universities will start to decline. In around 20 years, you will see universities like Oxford far ahead of anything in the United States, even Harvard. Universities like McGill in Canada will overtake universities like Harvard. Story 83. This harmful behavior will continue until there is a consequence. Classic bullying behavior has only one way to be stopped. Story 84. If Harvard caves and gives him what he wants, there is no going back. We are in serious trouble because that means no one will stand up to him. Story 85. 4 of the current Supreme Court justices have law degrees from Harvard University. It is interesting to see how the alumni influence the court. Story 86. Any international student should carefully reconsider if coming to the United States is worthwhile. Certain groups have made it clear that good education, rights, free speech, and decency are no longer valued, and oppressive measures are being enforced. Story 87. I am so angry. How dare he, the orange Muppet? This is a travesty to our community, and every fiber of my being pulses with rage. I will not sleep until our international brothers and sisters see justice served to this Oompa Loompa and his cabinet. Who is with me? Everyone? Story 88. Harvard can simply open multiple new overseas satellite locations to bypass him and demonstrate their intelligence. Story 89. Foreign students pay full tuition. That cash influx helps Harvard admit more underprivileged native students and provide excellent college educations to Americans. Story 90. It is obviously targeting a vendetta against Harvard. Otherwise, it would target all universities. This cannot be legal. Story 91. I am confident that some very skilled lawyers could effectively dismantle this argument in a court of law. Do you think Harvard University has some excellent lawyers? Story 92. No matter where people fall politically, international students bring a lot of cultural and intellectual value to schools like Harvard. Moves like this can seriously disrupt lives and academic research that benefits the world. I am curious how this aligns with broader goals in education and diplomacy. Story 93. Listen. College students aren't so broke and desperate that they will start eating the neighborhood pets. In all seriousness, being an international student is not the same as being an immigrant. It can be a pathway to citizenship, but students can also decide not to become American citizens. Additionally, the visa is for a temporary stay and must be renewed for longer stays. Story 94. Sounds like interference in free market commerce. Sounds anti-American. Sounds like former President Donald Trump doing more of his usual. Story 95. Only the nth iteration of everything Donald Trump touches turns to failure. Or, as a fellow Redditor posted, I am not saying Donald Trump is a Russian asset trying to destroy America from the inside. I am simply saying if he was, it would look exactly like this. Story 96. The whole notion is so anti-American. The United States has only held a leading edge in technology because of who we bring into the country to these kinds of schools. Almost every advancement has been driven by immigrants. The internet, all immigrants. Cars, trains, planes, and more. He is going after our primary means of progress, innovation, and more. It is utterly idiotic. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.